Welcome back. The festive season is upon us. A peak shopping period where local consumers are expected to spend over 284 billion rand. This according to Wonga's 7th annual summer spending survey. James Williams, Chief Marketing Officer at Wonga, joins us with more detail around the findings of the survey. Thank you so much for your time, James. Quite an interesting survey over here. And just actually to start off the conversation, just lay the table for us on the composition of the survey respondents, gender, age, also just what they're earning at this point.
Yeah, so thanks, Anati. So as you mentioned, it is our 7th annual summer spending survey. And this year we had over 13,000 respondents, which we got through a digital survey, which we promoted through various digital channels. We had responses from all 9 provinces, with the majority coming in from Gauteng at 40%, with the Western Cape next at 21%, all the way down to the Northern Cape coming in at 1% of the respondents. And in terms of gender, it was slightly female skewed, so 67% of respondents were female. The rest were male. Mm-hmm. In terms of age ranges, we surveyed people from the ages of 18 all the way up to over 65. And just note that 70% of the respondents were between the ages of 25 and 44. Mm-hmm. And lastly, in terms of incomes, we had a broad range of incomes across all responses. 23% of respondents earned less than 5,000 Rand a month. And on the other end of the scale, 11% of respondents earned in excess of 30,000 per month.
That 284 billion that I mentioned in the intro, how is that scaling to what we've seen in previous years, considering also the kind of economic condition that consumers have been in for the last year or 2 years even?
Yeah. So the 284 billion is certainly the headline grabbing number, but the reality of the matter is that year on year, summer spend per person has gone up by 20%, according to our survey. This year, the average spend per person came in at 6,800 Rand versus 5,700 Rand from last year. And this is actually the highest festive spend that we've seen since the inception of our survey in 2018. And we believe it's driven by a number of economic factors. So we are just coming out of a very high inflation environment, particularly in the last 12 months, with the costs of goods and food increasing substantially. And also the higher interest rates, although there is some recent respite for consumers with reductions in the repo rate. But that means that those servicing high value debt, such as home loans and vehicle asset finance, are having to pay far more to service that debt. So these are really the factors that we believe have increased festive spend on average by that 20%.
I'm actually wondering also how people, the source of the spending, what exactly are you seeing there in terms of those trends? You talk about, of course, the high interest rate environment that we have been in, but we have started to see interest rate cuts. So, and I do note that banks and other financial institutions are starting to kind of open up the taps in terms of credit as well. But also, I'm not really sure about savings and people's ability to save during this time. So what is the source? What are the trends looking like there in terms of the source of that spending? Yeah.
So when we ask consumers how they'll be funding their festive spend, 26% of them said that they had been saving throughout the year. And interestingly, this is down from last year, where the figure was higher than or above 30% at least. I think there were also people saying that they would be taking out credit to fund their festive expenses. But that number, again, is also down year on year, down to 20% this year versus 24% in 2023. And interestingly, a further 39% of respondents say that they have felt some recent respite from the interest rate cuts. So I think it's a blend of things. I think people have more available cash to be able to deploy over the festive season because of, the stabilization in terms of inflation and also the interest rate cuts, and therefore, far less reliant on savings and credit.
Yeah. Is there any indication on what people are actually planning on spending on this festive season? Because, you think of the festive season and immediately you think traveling, you think gifts for Christmas. Is there any indication on that?
Yeah. So when asked, our respondents indicated that 34% of their budgets would be going towards food and beverages. And I think, that's indicative of the the high inflation environment that we are just stepping out of now.
Yeah.
That figure is actually up 44% year on year to 2,700 Rand on average per respondent. Transport came in at 17% of festive basket spend. Gifting at 14%, and accommodation or holiday accommodation coming in at 13%. Interestingly, we've actually seen some recovery in festive travel. So 24% of respondents said that they did plan to travel out of province, and this was up from the 21% that we saw saying the same from 2023, but we're still not quite back to the pre-pandemic levels. I think in 2018 we saw figures of above 30% saying that they had planned festive travel.
I mean, just as we wrap up the conversation, James, are people more optimistic about the year ahead?
They absolutely are. So 53% of respondents said that they are optimistic or excited about 2025. And interestingly, when you look at the income bands by the people that did say they were optimistic, that stacks up heavily towards the higher income consumers. So they are feeling the most optimistic, whereas those on the lower end of the income scale are not as not looking forward to 2025 as much, should I say.
All right. Well, let's hope that there will be more relief than they expect in the year ahead. Thank you so much for your time and really your insights there on festive spending trends that we are seeing. That was James Williams, Chief Marketing Officer at Wonga.